Welcome back to another Big Sky media panel. Lots to break down this week. We got Mark Nelke out of Idaho, Ian Bivona out of Washington. Welcome back to another Big Sky media panel. Lots to break down this week. We got Mark Nelke out of Idaho, Ian Bivona out of Washington, Fritz Neighbor here with me, Daily Interlake and Kalispell. So it's going to be a fun one, no doubt. Epic weekend. Last weekend of Big Sky football. Let's get this one rolling with our performance of the week. Fritz, glad to have you back on the panel. Why don't we just get right to you, and then we'll go around the horn here.
Well, I guess we have to start with the big showdown in Moscow. A pretty dominant start by the Griz, and then they held on. There's some really good things that happened in that game. And I've done this year after year when somebody passes up a field goal early in the game. I'm like, but I want those points later. And that happened in that game with the Vandals. They went for it from the 12-yard line on fourth down, got picked off in the end zone, and lost by 2. And a game that really had some momentum switches late in the game, in the second half. The way the Griz controlled the line of scrimmage early was impressive. And then, I don't know, I guess there's something to be said for patience, that Bobby Hauck has some patience with his offense and the way they do things. And they knew Idaho liked to bleed the clock. I think it was kind of funny that when Idaho went tempo, they scored right away 3 times. But, the game kind of got shortened. That was to Montana's favor, and they held on.
Yeah, no. Griz, easy performance of the week right there. That was a heck of a game. And, yeah, sometimes it comes down to those couple of points. I always think of, he's struggling right now, but Belichick, historically, Bill Belichick, you don't leave points on the table, control field possession, the little things like that end up winning you a lot of football games, especially rivalry, high-stakes games. But let's jump to Ian. How about your performance of the week, Ian?
It's kind of hard to pass up Idaho State coming back from down 41-14 against Eastern Washington, a game I'm sure we'll talk a pretty good amount on this episode today. But they did so, scoring 27 points in 17 minutes. That's pretty insane. Like even that Super Bowl between the Falcons and Patriots, Patriots had more time to come back in that time and fewer points. So I gotta go with the Bengals there for my performance of the week.
Yeah, well said. And I said it before the show. We were talking off air. That's the one that's going to keep some coaches up at night for sure, because that is a meltdown for Eastern Washington. How about yourself, Mark, performance of the week?
Well, we just talked about this kid because I didn't know how to pronounce his name, and now I still don't. I think Dante Shikari from Portland State.
Sashere. Yeah, I've been there.
Should have wrote it out phonetically. Sashere, 14-19, 159 yards. That's pretty. 5 touchdowns on 14 completions. Pretty good. They win at NAU, and they beat Portland State's pretty good team this year.
Yeah, I actually went with Sashere as well. 5 touchdowns, 1 with his legs. And last week we were talking NAU, team on the rise, got Portland State. That should be a game they can win and kind of cement themselves as a team to beat. And all of a sudden, Portland State flipped it on them and kind of blew them out. So, no, impressive performance from Sashere. Let's just dive kind of into a little bit more of that Montana-Idaho game. I know Fritz kind of led in with it, but Mark, wanted to get your reaction to that one. Kind of a bit of a dogfight for sure for both teams, and a bit of an ugly game at times, but overall one that Big Sky football fans are going to remember for a long time. Nationally televised late-night game, just an absolute thriller.
Yeah, thriller for the fans. Tough for us on deadline, but anyway, one of the kind of the key guys is actually that kicker for Montana, Grant Glasgow. Not only the field goals, but I think more importantly for him is he had 6 kickoffs, and they're all went through the end zone, I think, for touchbacks. And against Idaho, it's Jermaine Jackson, one of the top returners in the country. That was kind of a hidden big thing for the Griz. That was just 6 kick returns that they didn't have to defend against. So, and then the other thing I was thinking about the Idaho, I mean, they started off really kind of un-Idaho-ish. They looked like they were nervous. Kind of, I don't know how much, big game experience. This was a big game, and they hadn't played and stuff like that many of them so far. The Griz maybe have over the years, and so maybe that helped them in this environment. The Griz kind of took it to them, like what Fritz said about controlling the tempo, running the clock, and eating up clock. Idaho only had 3 or 4 possessions in the first half, and he's right. When Idaho went up tempo, that's when they scored, and I think they probably would have scored again at the end if they'd recovered that onside kick that they actually recovered the first time. And the other thing I was thinking about on that game is, if they end up in the playoffs, they like to match up FCS or Big Sky teams, and if they match up the Griz and Idaho, does that help Montana maybe host that game because they beat them? Plus, they could outbid Idaho for the playoff game too. Fritz could kind of talk to that, I guess.
Yeah, no, that game, lot of good points there. We'll get your reaction to that one, Ian, and we'll keep it moving around. But it was an absolute wild game, like you said. Mark, could have big playoff implications later as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a tale of two halves for the Grizzlies offense. Almost 300 yards of total offense in that first half, getting that 20-0 lead, and then under 50 in that second half. That really allowed Idaho to come back in it. And then turnovers were really just the difference for Idaho. Those 2 interceptions on those first 2 drives start that second half, and then obviously the last drive there, ending with that fumble.
Yeah, last week I remember I kind of mentioned if Montana wants to have a chance, they got to take care of the ball, not make mistakes early, and beat themselves. And I couldn't believe it. Idaho kind of was the one who beat themselves, so I didn't see that one coming. And get to Fritz's take on that.
Oh yeah, well I was going back to what Mark said. A year ago I was at the Idaho game when they came into Washington Stadium, and they just looked so comfortable and so poised. Really impressed with Giovanni. I still am. Such a good quarterback, such a good player. And then at some point things flipped. They just looked. They had that sold out KB Dome. They had national TV. They didn't look like the comfortable team like they did the year before. And Montana had a good game plan. They surprised them a little bit here and there. Talked a little bit about giving up points, but there's a lot. Jason Eck afterwards said something about we were in heavy aggression mode. We thought we might be in a shootout. It might take 35, 40 points to win this one. And then just the way the Griz were able to just bear up and get that turnover when they needed. Dale Edwards needs to be able to beat one-on-one blocks. Bobby Hogg mentioned that. Was really happy that he got that turnover at the end. And then afterwards, Bobby said that's the first time the Griz have beaten ranked opponents on the road back-to-back since 2000. And I can't figure out how he knows that, and I don't. Says he doesn't pay attention to stuff. Comes up with that nugget.
Right. He's looking that kind of stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was I think it was a season-defining type of win for the Grizzlies. For the Vandals, on the other hand, sometimes you kind of got to get punched in the mouth, reevaluate. The loss could have came at the right time of the year. So there's always that. Sometimes that happens. Kind of go look back at the film, make the adjustments. And the Grizzlies, the amount of pressure they put on McCoy, you're not going to see that week in and week out. They found something that worked with that 3-3-5. They made him uncomfortable. And McCoy was so good that even when he was on the fly scrambling towards the sideline, the play was never dead. We saw him save a couple plays, make a couple great plays. So I'm still thinking the Vandals can compete. I did want to ask you guys, do you guys think, I'll start with Mark and we'll go around to the fact you've been covering a lot of Idaho. Do you think this changes the way you look at the Vandals as a top-tier contender, or do you think it's just, like I said, a game you reevaluate, you learn from that kind of an experience?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're still a contender. They won. They beat Sac State, and they got Montana State coming in a couple of weeks. So hopefully, maybe they kind of learn from this game how to play in a big game that's going to come up in a couple of weeks. I don't know if it's going to be sold out or not, but it's a big game, and sometimes you have to go through these games to learn from them and go on. So it doesn't change. I think what was interesting about this game was like McCoy, they don't ask him to run a lot, and they kind of needed him to run here out of necessity. He was getting chased all around the field. So, but they have talked about him being a better runner, and that's been a thing that is added to his arsenal, is the fact that he can run. Obviously you don't want your quarterback running too much, but he basically kept them in the game with his feet.
Yeah, he was making plays out of nothing all night long. The Grizzlies had so much pressure. He very rarely had a clean pocket. So I do think that they could bounce back as well. I just want to get your thoughts on that, Ian, then we'll get to Fritz on that one.
Yeah, Josh, like you said earlier, sometimes you got to get punched in the mouth and see how you respond. nearly coming back from down that margin they were in that first half. It's kind of it'll be interesting to see how they can build off of this. Like you said, they got a tough game against Montana State coming up. But yeah, I still believe in this Idaho team.
Yeah. How about yourself, Fritz, on the outlook for the Vandals kind of rest of the year? Because they were kind of trending as a top 5 FCS team, and tough loss, but opportunity to bounce back. Your thoughts on the rest of the year for Idaho?
Yeah, we used to enjoy Pac-12 after dark. Now we got the Big Sky after dark because we'll have another 8:30 start this weekend with Sac State and Montana State. Idaho's still really good. They, as X said after the game, the good news is we have another big game in 2 weeks, Montana State. Cats have a little bit of a bear of a schedule coming up. I don't know. I guess the Cats could run the table. They're really good. I'm really impressed, but it would be more like the Big Sky Conference of old if they started grabbing each other as they're trying to get out of the bucket, dragging each other back down, and have a couple teams at the top with one big loss.
That seems very realistic. And like I said, I'm still high on Idaho. They do have the opportunity to bounce back, like we all just mentioned, that Montana State game. And you can't help but wonder, maybe they were looking ahead just a little, didn't take the Grizzlies as serious, thinking, we got the Bobcats after our bye. That's kind of the premier top 5 matchup right now. We want to win that one. And hey, sometimes that happens. They could have been saving a few tricks for later, and then they had to kind of unload there, go no huddle, and really hurry up because they had to play from behind. So no, it's hard to write off the Vandals after that loss, but definitely a big one for Montana and kind of quiet some noise because they had a lot of haters around the program. Kind of people on Twitter, the Twitter trolls were out for sure, and I feel like now all of a sudden they're a top 10 team again, so it's hard to argue. But moving along, I did want to get your guys' reaction. We'll start with Ian on this one. Reaction to that Idaho State comeback. It was 41-14 in the third quarter. I had mentioned before the show I was kind of watching that one on and off. This game's over. I'm going to turn this one off, and all of a sudden you look back at the score and see Eastern Washington blew that one. I couldn't believe it. So, Ian, your reaction to that game?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of comes down to miscues. Eastern Washington missed 2 field goals in that fourth quarter. There was that 50-yard one with just under 6 minutes left that I think it was about like a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 deep inside Idaho State territory. Could have played aggressive, go for the first down. They opt for the field goal, ended up missing it. And obviously that 38-yarder with a couple seconds left in the game. And then on that onside kick, it doesn't look like anyone really kind of goes for the ball. It's just kind of the way the ball bounced, I guess. I don't know. But it just really kind of came down to Eastern miscues down the stretch of that game.
Yeah, just an absolutely insane game. How about your thoughts on that one, Mark?
Yeah, it was kind of shocking that they let such a big lead get away. I mean, good for Idaho State. I mean, they've been down for almost forever, and it'd be nice. We'll see if they can back it up. I mean, they had a good year a few years ago, and that was like 2 coaches ago. But they've struggled since then. So, like I said, devastating loss for Eastern. It seems like they got to win out now. I mean, they got to go 5-0 to get to 7-4, and it's going to be tough. One of them was at Montana State, so it could come down to that game being whether they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, Eastern was building a resume. They had 2 wins over ranked opponents, and then to lose that one is a tough one, no doubt about it. How about your reaction to that game, Fritz? Just thoughts on that one?
I thought it was interesting that the Idaho-Montana game, there was an onside kick that appeared that Idaho recovered, and they were called offside. And then Montana recovered the second one. Eastern and Idaho State, Eastern recovered their onside kick by Idaho State, but then got a blindside blocking penalty. So they redid the kick, and that's the one that Idaho State recovered. Kind of the opposite of the Idaho-Montana game. And then they scored 7 plays later, and now all of a sudden they're ahead. Just one of those weird deals. That's a Big Sky conference.
Yeah, Big Sky in a nutshell. My reaction to that one, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, but their head coach, Cody Hawkins, he's got to be in the Coach of the Year combo, just having 2 conference wins. I know that's a kind of a jumping the gun a little bit, but they've been down, like Mark said. They've struggled. Last year won 1 conference game. This year already 2 conference wins or 2-1 in conference play, and you knock off an Eastern Washington team who had 2 ranked wins. So maybe he's not going to win Coach of the Year because they're not going to win enough games, but point being, it feels like he's turning the corner. And off, like schematically, he's really got something cooking. He's kind of an offensive guru. We've already seen that his time with coordinator at Davis. Now he's translated to the Bengals, and all of a sudden, they're maybe not the team to beat, but they're one of those teams. They always say there's teams you don't want to play down the stretch. They might turn into one of those teams because they just throw the heck out of the football. They're going to be aggressive on offense, and it's hard to stop. We saw them beat an Eastern Washington team with Asparis on the field having a big game. So it was an impressive win for the Bengals. So we'll move into a little something new. We'll do some buy or sells. Thought we'd do a little Big Sky kind of hot takes. What do you guys think? Let's start this one out with Ian again. Is Sac State still a threat to win the Big Sky despite playing down to their competition against NAU and Northern Colorado the last couple of weeks? Because they lost against Idaho, and now they've kind of played down. They haven't had that big statement win. Of course, big game on the horizon this weekend to bounce back. But where are you at with Sac State buying or selling them as a contender to win the conference?
Yeah, as a contender to win the conference, I'm kind of selling there just from that loss to Idaho earlier in the year. And playing down to competition 2 weeks in a row, I feel like maybe at that point it's not playing down the competition. You know, maybe you're getting into these close games. I want to see them kind of widen those score margins a little bit as we get down the stretch. But if they can still stack up wins, they're definitely still in it.
No, well said. How about you, Fritz?
Yeah, I'm selling on Sac State right now. Been wrong before too, but you know, they've got a new quarterback, Bennett, who's really good, really mobile. Kind of does a job that was getting done a year ago for two quarterbacks. Good, but you know, they had to replace a lot of people. You know, that running back they had last year, Scadabo, he's putting up nice numbers at Arizona State right now. They could have used him, and so you know, you're looking at new tailbacks, new head coach. Was the D corner moved up to head coach, D coordinator. They're still good, but they're not quite the juggernaut they have been.
Yeah, no, well said. How about yourself, Mark? Your thoughts on Sac State buy or sell their chance of winning the conference?
Well, it's not very good radio, as it were, but I got to sell too. You know, I think, you know, they're a playoff team, sure, but and we'll know a little bit more when they play Montana State on Saturday. But they still got to play them and play the Griz. So I would say no. I would sell them winning the Big Sky, but buy that they'll be in the playoffs.
No, that's a good point, and I think it is funny. We all kind of mentioned that Montana State game. It could change that quickly. You go knock off the Bobcats, all of a sudden they're right back in the Big Sky championship conversation. I'm selling as well at this point, but that's how quickly things change in the Big Sky. I guess this Saturday we're going to learn a lot about the Hornets and their trajectory the rest of the year. Mark, you mentioned this earlier, so we'll start with you. Eastern Washington, do they have a chance to make the playoffs? You buying or selling on them having a chance after the Idaho State loss?
Well, no is a tough word. I would say slim, but since you have to pick buy or sell, I would pick buy. Like I said earlier, it might come down to how their game at Montana State goes. They kind of remind me of when I was in high school. We had a teacher that talked about a person that was in a precarious position as having one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. And so I think that's kind of where Eastern is right now. So I will buy that one.
Yeah, no, they did have those 2 ranked wins early in the year, so it's hard to argue that. No, that's a great metaphor. How about you, Fritz? Your thoughts on Eastern as having a shot at making the playoffs?
I'm trying to run through my head and pick 5 playoff teams from the Big Sky, which is what they had a year ago. Mm-hmm. And just based on that, I'll say buy because I'm not sure Weber has a staying power, and he's got great quarterback play. 403 on Saturday in a game that you know they should have won.
Yeah,
I'll buy.
Yeah, no, the QB position's so crucial nowadays. How about you, Ian, buying or selling on Eastern's playoff hope?
I'm buying. It's tough down the stretch, very tough. You gotta go 5-0. But with Vesperis back, like Fritz just said, he threw for 400 yards last week in his first game back. He can keep stacking up these performances. It's really going to come down to that Montana State game, though. I think that's their second to last game of the year, if I remember correctly. We'll see if they can get a couple wins before then, but I'm buying. Not super confident, but we'll see how Vesperis does.
Yeah, no, he's got the talent to, like I said last week, I thought they're a top 25 team in the country. That's a tough loss to Idaho State. I'm, as of now, selling a little bit, but they win 4 of their last 5. You play the Bobcats tough. You have the momentum rolling to end of the season. It's kind of a what have you done lately for me kind of a league in college football where if you're rolling at the end of the year, the voters will pay attention. They might forget about that loss. So although that one's going to be a tough one to get over, they still have hope to make a run. Kind of mentioned it already, where the conference might just beat themselves up so bad where a couple teams sneak in at the end who maybe weren't looking good right now. But moving along to Montana, they've kind of re-solidified themselves as a top-tier Big Sky team. Buying or selling on that? Let's start with you, Fritz, and then we'll move along.
Yeah, I think about a month ago I said, well, their schedule is not a bear like it was a year ago, and now it seems like it's more of one. That was pre-NEU loss. Now the games are getting tougher and tougher. They've played well the last 2 weeks, get those 2 wins on the road, ranked opponents. Portland State's still on that schedule, and Portland State played really well. Just gonna have to keep dealing with really mobile quarterbacks for this season. They have a bye this week, and then they go back down to Sac State for a game. I'm sorry, they're at home against Sac State, I believe. No, they're at home against Northern Colorado, which plays Sac State very well. They're a playoff team. I don't think they're the Big Sky Conference champion. We're talking about them having to beat the Bobcats, even though they get them at home. But top tier, absolutely. As usual, I imagine I will be at Washington Grizzlies Stadium.
Covering some playoff action. How about yourself, Mark? Thoughts on Montana as kind of re-emerging as a top-tier Big Sky contender?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for going buy or sell, I would say buy. I mean, you still got to pump the brakes on them a little bit. I mean, they did win, and they were kind of fortunate to hold on. They kind of eased off on the gas with a big lead the other night. It kind of almost bit them, but their quarterback play was really good, and they ran the ball, well, and controlled the clock for most of the game. So yeah, they are a top tier team. So I would buy that one.
Yeah, well said. How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying as well right there. They're towards the top of the conference already right now. 3 of their last 4 games are at home. That's obviously super important. And you get the brawl of the while at home too. So, hey, you never know. Crazy things happen in college football.
Rivalry games, college football, you really kind of throw it all out the window. I always say all the stats go away and it's just leave it all on the field. So I agree. I'm buying as well. Earlier in the year, I kind of saw the Griz. Maybe they're even like the 6th best team in the conference. I didn't know. The more I watch them this year, they're kind of like an unorthodox southpaw boxer, someone you watch who, it's an ugly style. It's not fun to watch, but they wear their opponent down, and when the time's right, they do throw some haymakers. And if a couple of those connect, all of a sudden they're putting up touchdowns and shutting down their opponent. So it's not the most TV-friendly style in college football nowadays, air raid offenses, motion offenses. Maybe they don't bring that to the table. But when it all said and done, they find a way to get it done, and that's pretty much what it comes down to. Worth mentioning, I thought it really stood out. They sacked McCoy 6 times last week, and they held Anthony Woods 3.4 yards per carry, and we all were talking about him as a Big Sky MVP so far. So that really stood out to me. It's just not a pretty style, but they find a way to get it done. So that's kind of my thought. I'm buying the Griz as contenders. One more as far as buy or sell, and then we'll kind of wrap this up with a few predictions for the week. Thank you, as everybody, as always, for tuning into the show. Thank you guys for all being on the show. Well, we mentioned Portland State. They've kind of flown under the radar, and now I'm wondering, could they kind of leapfrog maybe Eastern Washington, UC Davis, and Weber and end up a top 5 team in the conference and maybe have a shot at a playoff spot? They're 2-1 in conference play, and remaining is home games versus ISU, EW, and Montana. That's some tough games in there, but winnable. And then on the road versus UC Davis and Northern Colorado. So we'll get started out with you, Ian, but your thoughts on Portland State making some noise down the stretch.
Yeah, you just listed through their schedule, and that was kind of the point I was going to make. I think they can be in most of these games down the stretch. Maybe not that Montana State game, but the other 4 on their schedule, I think they can. I think they can stay in those games if the ball bounces their way, pick up a couple wins. But yeah, I think they can be towards the top of this league.
Yeah, I've been impressed. How about you, Fritz? Thoughts on the Vikings? Yeah, I'm not sure I can buy them quite yet, but just thinking back, it wasn't that long ago that Chatre was really causing problems for the Bobcats too. Mm-hmm. So, quarterback play is so important in this league. I thought many of the doubts we had about the Griz went to that point. Since then, Clifton McDowell's kind of taken command and become a 6'4" tailback who throws. And And Portland State has another really mobile guy who does a great job. So not buying yet, but talk to me in a couple weeks.
Yeah, the potential's there. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I got to sell too. I mean, I think it's cool to see Portland State playing well. Their coach, you know, he's good for the league, so you kind of need to keep him around. He's a lot of fun to talk to and a good advertisement for their program and stuff like that. But I think it's gonna be hard for them to go. I mean, they're gonna have to at least go 4-1 down the stretch to get to 7, and I think that's gonna be tough. But still, you know, nice year for the Vikes.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm buying at this point, but I said it all so long, the Big Sky beating each other up. Easily they could drop a few of these games, so they're going to be a big-time test for the Vikings. It is interesting, though, they have that really bad loss versus Oregon, and then their other loss was against Wyoming, who's been a really not top 25, but they've been that caliber this year. They're 5-2, so their losses aren't that bad of losses. They look good in conference play. Sachere is a real playmaker. I'm buying right now, but there's a lot of moving parts. I don't know if they end up top 5, but with some uncertainty in the conference, there's a space for them to make their way in there into the conversation, where earlier in the year I would have thought they were an 8th or 9th team at best in the conference. So I have been impressed. They got the Bengals in town this weekend. Idaho State's coming off a huge win for the program, so they're going to be motivated. It's a good test for Portland State to kind of either take care of business. We said this about NAU last week, but there's games you got to win if you want to be a contender. This is one of those for Portland State. So we'll kind of wrap this thing up with any predictions for this week. We got Montana State at Sac State, top 5 battle there. Got Idaho State at Portland State, I just mentioned, and then Weber State at Eastern Washington. So all kind of Northwest-based games. Just kind of your guys' thoughts, predictions for the week. We'll start with Ian and just kind of go around the circle and wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I think Eastern gets back on track this week after a disappointing week last week, going against a Weber State team that's kind of struggled to put points up on the board this year. I think the Eagles could run away with this one.
I think so as well. Mark, how about your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I think this is a good week for Idaho to have a bye. They've kind of been through the gauntlet 7 straight weeks and 5 of them on the road. Here's a good chance to kind of get healthy and kind of push hit the reset button and make a run at it in a couple weeks against Montana State.
Yeah, they've had a ridiculous strength of schedule, so definitely a well-deserved bye after a tough loss, late-night game. Get remotivated, go play the Bobcats. How about you, Fritz? Predictions for the week, things to watch?
Well, the Griz have a bye, and I'm really looking forward to Big Sky After Dark Saturday night. I think the Cats will probably pull it off with their 2-quarterback system. They have Tommy Malotte's back, along with who I still think might be the MVP of the league, Sean Chambers. And I think the Cats will get it done down there in Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards them pulling off a double-digit win as well. That being said, that's kind of one of my big things to watch this week. Bobcats haven't had to play from behind much. They haven't had to play. They played tough game versus South Dakota State, but other than that, they've been running away from teams 2 years now, it feels like. So this could be an opportunity to have a real test on the road, nationally televised game. How do they respond if they maybe do get punched in the mouth early, if the Hornets jump out? Can the Bobcats come back in the passing game if they take away that run game? But that being said, those are a lot of what ifs. We'll see what happens. I'm expecting the Bobcats to roll. But that being said, it'll be a good test for them. Nationally televised game. We said it last week. We'll say it again. Big Sky After Dark could get weird. You never know. So, no, great stuff, guys. If there's anything else you guys want to throw out there, if not, another awesome episode of the Big Sky Now. All right. Nope, that'll do it. Thank you to everybody at home for watching. We dove into a lot of content. This might have been our longest panel yet, but well worth it. So thank you to everybody for checking it out. Thank you to you guys, as always, for taking the time to do this. So have a good one, and we'll talk soon.
See you guys.